our prophet has returned.
The creative freedom of animation allows cartoons to take their stories anywhere, and more times than we could have imagined, many of these cartoons have predicted the future. Which show predicted the Pokemon Go craze? Which show featured the future of a scary movie franchise? And how was Inspector Gadget ahead of his time? Time to break down these future predictions from favorites like The Simpsons, South Park, and Robot Chicken.
Let's go into my office.
Pokemon Go took the world by storm back in 2016. Well, back in 1999, South Park could see the rise of Pokemon coming and decided to take it on with the episode entitled Chin Pokemon.
Wow.
The parody of the Pokemon included everything from toys to video games. Much like the Pokemon Go craze and controversy with the app, the children of South Park were being tracked and manipulated with the various Chin Pokemon products. Just like real people exploring the outdoor world trying to catch them all, the kids of South Park were addicted to the trend, and it took some major intervention to stop it all. One of the funniest parts is how strong the Pokemon brand remains to this day, and South Park predicted the brand domination over 20 years ago, when the anime was just reaching the United States. Milhouse isn't the brightest character on The Simpsons, but he was able to make a bold prediction that no one else expected. The prediction came in the 2010 season premiere episode where Lisa has some friends over to watch the live Nobel Prize announcements. When Martin holds up the Nobel Prize pool, check out Milhouse's pick for economics: Bang Holstrom. Well, 6 years later, the MIT professor would actually win the prize for economics, and hopefully Milhouse cashed in on the delayed pool victory. Clearly, the Simpsons writers did their research when it came to actually filling out the pool. Poor Steve Harvey. Despite being one of the greatest Family Feud hosts, hosting his own talk show, and writing many best-selling books, all anyone can talk about is his Miss Universe mishap where he announced the wrong winner back in 2015. The mistake actually aired on Fox, home of Futurama, the animated series which showcased an eerily similar error back in the year 2000. During the season 2 episode, The Lesser of Two Evils, Leela gets crowned Miss Universe. Unfortunately for her, the host and judge, Zap Brannigan, read the wrong name, and Miss Vega 4 was declared the winner as Leela got stripped of her crown. We have to wonder if Steve Harvey watched the episode to, make himself feel better after the incident. The Child's Play franchise has been going strong for years and relied on Brad Dourif to voice the menacing doll for all this time, right up until the 2019 reboot got released. In the reboot, Chucky is voiced by legendary voice actor Mark Hamill. Of course, we all know him as Luke Skywalker, but Hamill has voiced numerous cartoon characters, including the Joker from Batman the Animated Series.
It's nice that way.
Oddly enough, back in 2005, Hamill took his first stab, see what we did there? Voicing Chucky in a parody for the cartoon Robot Chicken. His voice role was great back then, and showcased a lot of potential for the future. A future which turned into a memorable reboot. We have to wonder if producers approached him due to the scene, or if Robot Chicken creators had some hindsight into Hamill's future. Caitlyn Jenner's transformation from Bruce took the world by surprise back in 2015. Well, not everyone was surprised, especially the writers and animators on Family Guy. Years before Jenner announced she was transgender, Family Guy made direct remarks about the former Olympian. First came a scene with Brian and Stewie where Stewie directly states that Bruce Jenner was a woman.
Bruce Jenner is a man.
No, Brian. That's what the press would have you believe.
Then there's a scene on a naval ship where Peter introduces Bruce Jenner to come out and do a seductive dance for the Navy guys. The feather boa and girly gestures were definitely hinting about Jenner's transformation. The show pokes fun at a ton of celebrities, but this instance seems a little too on the nose for the show's creators to not have a little more insider information. And speaking of celebrity predictions, Family Guy nailed another one, this time on actor Kevin Spacey. In recent years, a ton of controversy has swarmed around Kevin Spacey, including some major allegations of inappropriate actions from Kevin towards many of his male coworkers. Back in 2005, Family Guy had a quick gag that ended up reflecting some of the truth behind the allegations. When Stewie makes a bet with Brian, he proceeds to run naked through a mall and screamed out that,
Help! I've escaped from Kevin Spacey's basement! Help me!
Yeah, yikes. The message is clear, but Spacey's actions would not go public for over a decade after the episode aired. Can you imagine if all the KFCs around your town were shut down? Yeah, well, this is exactly what happened in the 2010 episode of South Park entitled Medicinal Fried Chicken. When the KFC does close in South Park, Cartman decided to sell his own buckets of KFC and reap the benefits. Flash forward to 2018, and KFC is forced to close several hundred locations in the UK due to operational issues. So what happened? People began selling KFC chicken on eBay, but for over $100 a chicken. The the 2-day wait was apparently too long for some people as they shelled out a whole lot of money to purchase the fried chicken. Cartman would be proud. The voting machine mishaps in the 2012 Barack Obama and Mitt Romney election. In real life, people were selecting a candidate like Obama only to have a Romney checkmark appear on the electronic voting screen. Well, back during Obama's first election in 2008, The Simpsons predicted this disaster playing out on the electronic voting machine. Homer clearly taps Obama, but a vote for John McCain pops up.
No, I want to vote for Obama.
No matter how much Homer tries to change his vote, more votes get triggered for McCain. Of course, The Simpsons take their future predictions one step further by literally sucking Homer into the machine, but you get the picture. Elections are messy, and The Simpsons showcased this in the simplest way possible. In the world of television and movies, there are so many 9/11 conspiracies out there. Basically, any type of programming that featured the Twin Towers is tossed into the mix and brought into the conversation as predicting the disaster. Even Bugs Bunny cannot avoid this fate. In the 1943 short, Falling Hair, Bugs takes on a flying gremlin who attempts to crash his plane. The battle ensues and eventually reaches a city where Bugs must pilot the plane between two similar-looking towers so the plane doesn't crash into the towers. He makes it, and decades later, the animated short became relevant again when people tried to connect the whole thing to the 9/11 tragedy. Sadly, this isn't the only 9/11 connection people have made to cartoons, no matter how far-fetched the connections may seem. In 2005, the world of cinema broke new ground with the mainstream release of Brokeback Mountain starring Jake Gyllenhaal and Heath Ledger. The film was about two cowboys who secretly lusted for one another and included memorable camping scenes that were seemingly predicted by a cartoon years earlier.
All this for a bunch of stupid movies?
Back in 1998, it was none other than South Park's Cartman who predicted the future film in the episode Chef's Chocolate Salty Balls. When the Sundance Film Festival comes to town, Cartman shows up and claims that all independent films are just about gay cowboys eating pudding.
Nah, dude, independent films are those black and white hippie movies. They're always about gay cowboys eating pudding.
Well, minus the pudding, he was right on track with the popularity and rise of Brokeback Mountain. For years, one of the staple shows in Las Vegas was the White Tiger Spectacular featuring Siegfried and Roy. On The Simpsons, the duo was mocked in the season 5 episode Springfield, when Mr. Burns opens up his own casino and presents the Gunter and Ernst show. Well, the White Tiger had finally had enough and attacks the two performers in a way that wasn't much different from real life. The 1993 episode seemed to come true 10 years later when Roy was attacked on stage by a white tiger after seemingly suffering from a stroke. The attack closed their show for good, and the world of Las Vegas changed forever following the scary animal incident. Inspector Gadget was a big hit back in the 80s. If only all the children watching knew how much of the show would predict their future. For example, Penny often wore a smartwatch with video communication. She had her very own laptop that looked very similar to early versions of companies like Toshiba. One of the biggest predictions of the future would come in the form of a digital camera. Penny used a camera that would connect to a computer and snap photos. No film was needed. The idea seemed way out there back in the 80s, but pretty much every piece of tech that Penny used actually became a reality. Back in the year 2000, we all got to see Bart to the Future, where we learn that Lisa Simpson is President of the United States in 2030. During a quick scene with Lisa, she mentions one of the former presidents before her was Donald Trump.
As you know, we've inherited quite a budget crunch from President Trump.
Well, 16 years later, the prediction came true as Trump was elected president. Actually, let's keep the Simpsons prediction train going. If you thought the Donald Trump prediction was impressive, well, then consider one of the biggest media purchases in history when Disney purchased 20th Century Fox. First came the rights to Star Wars from Lucasfilms, and then came the whole 20th Century Fox company. The funny part about the prediction is that many viewers may have easily missed the moment. Back in 1998, an episode showcased Homer visiting 20th Century Fox. Well, if you look closely at the sign, it says a division of Walt Disney Co. Plain and simple prediction from the brilliant Simpsons writers. Tangent time. If you heart Screen Rant content, then boy howdy do we have something for you. If you subscribe to us and click that little bell, you'll be notified every time we release a new video. Outstanding. If you're on mobile, make sure notifications are on via your app settings. Season after season, The Simpsons features a massive lineup of guest stars. In the 2012 episode, Lisa Goes Gaga, Lady Gaga takes over a ton of the episode, including an animated performance where she flies up in the air and sings a song about little monsters. 5 years later, Lady Gaga got her halftime show performance in real life. and she must have looked back on the Simpsons episode because there are many similar elements. One of the most obvious is when Lady Gaga gets hoisted up into the air, just like her animated counterpart. Of course, it all could be a coincidence considering Lady Gaga's extravagant concerts over the years, but we just love to believe that The Simpsons truly does predict the future. Before Robert Downey Jr. made Iron Man the cool and charismatic hero we know him as today, Marvel released an animated series back in the early 1990s based off of the character. In the 1994 episode, The Grim Reaper wears a Teflon coat. Stark tries to prevent a powerful warplane from going into production and uses a pretty disturbing video to prove his point. The video showcases the plane invading the airspace of New York City and launching missiles at several of the buildings. One of the early explosions in the clip shows a couple of missiles hitting a pair of twin towers that look similar to the World Trade Center. To only make the conspiracy stronger, the end of the episode features the same plane trying to stage a similar attack on Washington, D.C. The two locations and visuals are pretty surprising to see, considering they took place 7 years before the September 11th attacks. Small drones were once a novelty that people enjoyed flying in their backyard. Well, now they have expanded in all different areas of professional life, including the world of media. Drone cameras are used at all types of events, and naturally, Futurama was one of the first cartoons to showcase the futuristic tech. In a 1999 episode, the show features a parody of C-SPAN in the form of C-SPAN 9, and you could see the flying drone cameras capturing all the footage. Once the technology gets quiet enough and batteries last long enough, it's only a matter of time before drones start becoming an important part of all television broadcasts. The funny part of the drone camera prediction was that this came before HD television was even mainstream. Futurama is ahead of the game. South Park has never had a problem taking on celebrities, just ask R. Kelly or Tom Cruise. Another celeb on their list, Miley Cyrus. The odd part, South Park predicted Miley's future long before she shed her clean-cut Disney look and came swinging in on a wrecking ball. The episode itself aired in 2008 and actually focused on Britney Spears and her big public breakdown.
Oh boy, what's she done now?
The Miley stuff comes at the end of the episode as she starts to become a megastar. Well, the prediction of Miley's rise and major changes isn't the biggest surprise. So many child stars have gone through similar transformations as they transition to adulthood and leave the Disney brand behind. The Jetsons was another show with an uncanny ability to predict the future. Despite the show airing on smaller tube-based televisions, the Jetsons featured flat-screen TVs. And while we may not have flying cars quite yet, the robotic vacuum is now a thing people use on the daily inside their homes. Video chat was another big element on the Jetsons, and with so many new products, video chat has become a daily part of people's lives now. The Jetsons showcased a vision for the future, and so much of it has come true, except for a newer reboot of the show. It's not just early episodes of The Simpsons that were predicting the future. As recently as 2017, we got a glimpse of the future, this time with some spoilers for the final season of Game of Thrones. In the episode Surfsons, the Simpsons family watches as a dragon burns their whole town to the ground. Sound familiar? Just 2 years later, we would see the same twist as Daenerys completed her transformation into the Mad Queen and had her dragon burn King's Landing to the ground. Futurama always had the benefit of making funny jokes and visual puns about movies in the future. One of their best predictions actually came in the form of an official Baywatch movie. In the cartoon, Pamela Anderson's head makes a cameo appearance and the show mentions Baywatch the movie and Pamela's Oscar she earned for her role. While the Oscar thing was false, there was an official Baywatch film, and Pamela Anderson had an extended cameo, one with some slow motion action, just like Futurama predicted. Mel Gibson was making waves for his religious hit The Passion of the Christ, and South Park decided to do their own take on it with The Passion of the Jew. Using Gibson's actual picture, the episode featured him going deeper into some erratic behavior, including some anti-Semitic comments. And this was when he was still the beloved star of the Lethal Weapon franchise. A few years later, and the whole world would see the real Mel Gibson pretty closely to how South Park portrayed him.
He's absolutely out of his mind.
Outbursts, angry voicemails, and a derailed career would change the public perception of Gibson, and South Park predicted this all along. Sometimes the simple predictions can go a long way. Just take a small joke in a 2002 episode of Futurama. In a cutaway scene, we meet an alien couple who sit and enjoy TV. What are they watching? Friends reruns. Even though the sitcom was recently taken off of Netflix, the show was one of the more popular hits on the service and still airs in syndication on multiple networks. The funniest part of the gag was that the episode aired when Friends was still on the air. The best part of the episode is when the alien, Lur, goes to answer the door and doesn't mind missing the show because it's a Joey-centric episode. Yeah, we all cringe at the whole Joey-Rachel storyline as well. Besides Bender, we meet many other robots on Futurama, including the tragic tale of a robot named Calculon. The bot recalls a traumatic time when he was run down by a robotic car in 2019. Flash forward to years after the episode, in March of 2019. An automated Tesla car was driving and hit a robot standing on the side of the road. The robot was scheduled to be a display model for the upcoming CES show, but clearly plans were changed after the hit and run by the robot Tesla. So not only did Futurama predict the robot-on-robot violence, but they also predicted the exact year the brutal attack would take place.
Move on already!
Sticking with the theme of cars, we're heading back to the world of Inspector Gadget, and one of his more impressive gadgets, the self-driving car. The inspector's car would drive, follow GPS directions, and even park itself. This is our future. Not only is the Tesla self-driving, but the tech is expanding and several new cars now have built-in parking assist. The one thing we all wish cars had? The ability to expand the wheels, rise the car up, and drive right over the slow cars in front of us. Now that would be a great prediction come true in the future.
Will I get beat up today? All signs point to yes.
That ball knows everything.
The Simpsons has the uncanny ability to predict the future. Or we all can twist and change small moments and gags to make it seem like they do. Either way, we've heard the show predict Trump would be president and that Disney would buy 20th Century Fox.
Wow, the future is here.
So what's next? With 30 plus seasons of content, there are things that are bound to come true in 2020, including some major sports predictions, future technology, and possibly another presidential prediction. Now it's time to predict what The Simpsons already predicted that will most definitely come true. Make sense? Sure!
Brilliant. I have absolutely no idea what's going on.
Let's kick things off with one of the first 2020 predictions that became a reality. The Kansas City Chiefs won the Super Bowl.
What?
Let's flash back to the season 10 episode Sunday Cruddy Sunday. In the story, Homer and the gang attend the Super Bowl in Miami, where an unnamed team in red wins the Super Bowl. Flash forward to the first week in February of 2020 and boom, there we have it. The key to this prediction comes in two forms. First was the jersey the Chiefs wore for the game. They could have easily been in white, but their home team status ensured they were in red. Secondly, the Super Bowl location. Miami is often a hotspot for Super Bowl games, but the big game has been played all over the country, including Dallas and New Orleans. The player numbers featured in the locker room scene also match up many of the players on the active Chiefs roster. One number that stood out? Number 21. Which represents Bashaud Breeland, the cornerback who notched up 7 tackles and an interception in the big game. The prediction is just one of the many sports-based ones the show has featured over the years. In the spirit of the age-old question of which came first, the chicken or the egg, we have to ask, do inventors come up with their own ideas, or do they actually base some ideas off the Simpsons' creative minds? One piece of technology we could see becoming mainstream? Hologram mail. The episode of Bart to the Future not only featured the infamous Donald Trump prediction, but there's also a small moment where Bart receives a hologram message in the mail. FaceTime and AR technology have already become impressive mainstays in the digital industry, but we are on the forefront of hologram technology as well. Products like the Real Fiction HD3 display showcase hologram-like technology, and while it's marketed towards businesses, you could own one for your home. Soon, the visuals will integrate to feature live recordings, and FaceTime will become hologram time. Once we all start getting these, how much do you bet a majority of the first message we record will be, "Help me, Obi-Wan Kenobi, you're my only hope"? We're guessing around 80%. Sticking with the episode Bart to the Future, we have another fun moment featuring Marge and Homer enjoying dinner together. But Marge didn't spend hours preparing a perfect meal. Her and Homie simply suck some tubes in their mouths as they enjoy VR food. So far, half of this scene has become reality. VR sets are everywhere now, from PlayStation kits to mall displays. You cannot escape the growing trend of VR technology. So what about piping food into our mouths? Well, we are close to making this a reality. In an art exhibit with a restaurant theme, patrons wore VR headsets as they went on a food journey experience and indulged in food they didn't even know they were eating. Hosted at the James Beard House in New York City, the visuals in the headset showcased a blend of food imagery and visual worlds. Patrons would get handed the food items and eat them, not knowing exactly what they had until they read a menu card after the whole experience was complete. Sound preposterous?
Absolutely.
Could we be chomping on McDonald's fries while we wear a headset that showcases the Hamburglar on the run in a digital world? Sounds about right. Just like the trend of completely dark restaurants, the VR dining experience is only destined to grow, and so will all those headlines about The Simpsons predicting the future. More recently, we've all fallen for the clickbait where people claims that The Simpsons predicted the coronavirus outbreak. Well, that simply wasn't true. Screenshots were mixed from an episode featuring a fictional Osaka flu and a photoshopped image of a Kent Brockman news broadcast. With so many worldwide health pandemics, the prediction could literally apply to any major outbreak. While the show didn't predict the coronavirus, there are some major medical advancements that are getting closer and closer to becoming a reality. In the season 23 episode Holidays of Future Past, we see a pregnant Maggie get treated by an advanced medbot who performs an ultrasound and gives advice. Since the episode aired, we've seen surgery robots, diagnostic robots, and medical robots who can fill prescriptions. And now, advancements will help the treatment of pregnant women. There's one doctor in Japan who is developing a medical robot to conduct ultrasounds in remote locations, so no hospitals are needed. Once the robots get unleashed, it could change the way women are treated while pregnant and help serve people all over the globe. 2020 is a major election year, and this year's election could give us a major glimpse into the future. Seeing how The Simpsons already predicted Donald Trump's presidential run, we have to imagine they wanted to take another shot in the dark. Well, in 2016, the Treehouse of Horror special featured the Simpsons family shopping for a Christmas tree on Halloween night. Homer was dressed like a robot from the future. He peels back a panel to reveal a political button that reads Ivanka 2028. While we know Ivanka won't be running for president in 2020, we could see the seeds get set for a run in the future. And it all depends on how the election goes in November. Donald Trump loses, he could set up one of his children for a run in the future. Donald Trump wins, he could want to continue his legacy a few terms after he leaves office. We're not here to get political, but The Simpsons could be right on with the timing. And we could have a political showdown that pits Kanye West against Ivanka Trump. Ay caramba! Way back in 2005, we got another glimpse into The Simpsons' future with the episode Future Drama. Many people love to reference the hover cars in the story, but we're focused on Homer and Marge's relationship. In the episode, the couple separated because Homer invested all of their savings on an underwater home. While the idea seemed preposterous back then, Homer's investment may have actually paid off. Underwater homes are slowly becoming the newest vacation destination, and by the end of 2020, we'll see them everywhere, from tropical destinations to popular tourist spots like Dubai. Multiple companies in Japan have been working on a concept known as the ocean spiral. The design is meant to house hundreds of people and provide sustainable living using the ocean's energy and wildlife. So yeah, the next time you find yourself staying in an underwater hotel or putting a down payment on an Atlantic Ocean oasis, you have Homer Simpson to thank.
I'm a genius.
It seems like every year, more and more companies are merging together. We have a giant world of Disney incorporating 20th Century Fox, Marvel, Star Wars, Muppets, ABC, and ESPN. Then there's CBS and Viacom with the Paramount Network, MTV, and Nickelodeon. Only time will tell, but The Simpsons are already on the right track. In the flash-forward episode Lisa's Wedding, we saw a news report by Kent Brockman, who was reporting for CNN-BCBS, which was a merger between CNN, NBC, and CBS. While NBC and CBS will remain separate for the foreseeable future, some streaming giants could acquire companies pretty soon. Rumors have circulated about Lionsgate being sold to a bigger company, and set-up streaming services like Apple and Roku may acquire their own companies as well. The major players will only grow and gobble up a bunch of TV channels in the process. Get ready for AMC to become AMC Netflix or HGTV to become Hulu GTV. As Disney settles down with their massive Fox purchase, other companies will look to expand their foothold, and 2020 is the year it could happen. We all remember and love the classic Simpsons episode Deep Space Homer. But this wasn't the only time The Simpsons went to outer space. In the season 27 episode The Margian Chronicles, Lisa signs up for a one-woman expedition to Mars as a company plans to colonize the planet. When Marge becomes upset at Lisa's decision, she decides to go along for the ride, only to have the trip delayed all the way to 2051 when we show Marge and Lisa actually living on the planet. So, when will we start seeing memes of Lisa and Marge on Mars with confirmation of The Simpsons' great prediction? Pretty soon, actually. Elon Musk's SpaceX program has some major plans for the future. It starts with a cargo trip to Mars in 2020, then a citizen-based trip around the moon in 2023. This will be followed with a human mission to Mars in 2024, the first of its kind, if it all goes to plan anyway. If the Mars test goes well, it could only be a matter of time before astronauts start spending extended amounts of time on the planet. For every advancement in clean green energy, it seems like there's some type of company trying to shut things down. The frustrating barriers were portrayed perfectly on The Simpsons in the episode Paths of Glory. When Lisa enters an alternative energy derby, her solar-powered car is unable to finish the race due to a Duff beer blimp blocking out the sun. Well, 2020 is the year of major advancements, and major hurdles companies must go through to get mainstream. Yep, many future technologies will feel the same metaphorical shadow of a Duff blimp just like Lisa felt. Environmental rules and regulations have been stomped on and changed by Donald Trump's term in office, with nearly 100 major changes so far. 2020 will definitely cross the 100 mark, especially as Republicans look to bolster their campaigns with help from major oil companies. At least car companies continue to move forward, with electric versions like the Porsche Taycan, Hyundai Nexo, and Jaguar I-Pace. The more these companies thrive for clean energy solutions, the more we can move away from the green energy shadows blocking our future. There have been multiple times on The Simpsons where we've seen robots taking over. One of the earliest was the season 6 episode Itchy and Scratchy Land. The animatronic robots went haywire, causing massive destruction.
Ah, my hair! You chopped off my hair! Oh God, I'm ugly!
Then there's also the 2013 episode Them Robot, where Mr. Burns hires robots to take over the nuclear plant. Well, in 2020, we will see the advancements of robots, along with some potential problems. One of the first indicators? The Disney World Avengers Campus. Previews have showcased an animatronic Spider-Man flying high over guests and performing multiple mid-air moves. Well, it's only a matter of time before the thing goes haywire and lands on the guests below. Companies like Amazon are relying on AI tech even more than before, with major plans for expansion in 2020. Just like the nuclear plant's robots, we could see some major glitches or errors. Imagine ordering a new pair of shoes only to get a pair of oven mitts in the mail. Dang you, tricky robots!
Used to be cool. We are the same temperature we have always been.
The key to preventing the robot revolt is preventing hackers from taking control rather than the robots themselves. Good luck. We're watching you, Roomba. Now back to the charging cradle.
I believe I am psychic. My first prediction, I am either gonna fly or ruin that family's picnic.
Hey, you've ruined our picnic!
Psychic!
Many of us watch cartoons as a way to escape the real world, but it's always right there, waiting for us the moment Netflix interrupts us to ask if we're still watching. Some animated shows even feature real-world events and situations which sometimes get a little bit too close to reality for comfort. Today, we'll be talking about some scenes from your favorite cartoons that ended up being rather prophetic in hindsight, but even though Homer Simpson may have predicted a major scientific event, sometimes even our favorite cartoons have gotten things wrong.
I have no date, a 2-liter bottle of Shasta, and my all-rush mixtape. Let's rock.
Homer Simpson isn't the smartest guy around, and we all know that he's woefully unqualified for pretty much anything that doesn't involve eating donuts. So it's kind of crazy that he works at a nuclear power plant, and if things go wrong, it could spell disaster for way more than just the humble town of Springfield. But maybe Homer's smarter than we give him credit for, especially since he managed to figure out something that eluded actual scientists for quite some time. Who would have guessed that Homer J. Simpson would solve the mass of the Higgs boson 14 years before the European Organization for Nuclear Research could do so? In The Wizard of Evergreen Terrace, Homer decides to try his hand at inventing. We have a feeling that he would have been sent home from Shark Tank empty-handed with inventions like an electric hammer and a device that delivers blasts of makeup.
And now you're ready for a night on the town.
But he also calculated the mass of the Higgs boson to be 775 giga-electron volts, or GeV. According to Dr. Simon Singh, author of The Simpsons and Their Mathematical Secrets, that figure is surprisingly similar to the actual 125 GeV estimate made by CERN over a decade later in 2012. The writing team behind The Simpsons contains a surprising number of mathematicians, and the author of that formula was one of them. After his stint on The Simpsons, David X. Cohen became the head writer and executive producer of Futurama, another show that managed to predict the future more than once. Seeing futuristic technology on Futurama isn't exactly surprising, but it's not the only show to feature devices that seemed advanced for the time. Let's take a look back at the classic cartoon Inspector Gadget. Many of the gadgets we saw used by the Inspector and his allies look an awful lot like the technology we now take for granted. Just look at the Gadget-Mobile, which featured an autopilot mode and self-parking abilities. This was unheard of at the time, but now it's becoming more and more commonplace. Then there's Penny's computer book, which looks an awful lot like early versions of laptop computers, which weren't released for years after Penny debuted this tech. It even had a predictive text feature, since it assumed what she was searching for after a minimal data input. It also featured digital maps comparable to modern-day Google Maps or satellite navigation systems. She also had a digital camera-like device, which she hooked up to the computer book in order to take photos. Penny was always a step or 12 ahead of her uncle, but apparently she was ahead of her time by our standards as well. Wait a minute, is The Simpsons way more science savvy than we originally thought? Sure, there are lots of jokes about Homer's eating habits and Bart's prank phone calls, but there are also some pretty clever moments hidden in there. It's even possible that the show managed to predict the spread of the coronavirus 27 years ago. Yes, many of us were stunned to discover that our local stores had sold out of toilet paper and disinfectant wipes, but maybe we should have been paying closer attention to The Simpsons lesson on how things like this can spread. In the episode Marge in Chains, Springfield is hit by the fictional Osaka flu. The source of the illness was a Japanese factory worker who coughed into a box before sending it over to the United States, where it was opened by Homer Simpson. Yes, the show managed to demonstrate an illness originating in a foreign country and making its way to the US, but it's not as major of a prediction as some people think. There are edited images of the episode online, which make it seem as though it dealt with coronavirus specifically, but rest assured, the episode only showed the transmission of the Osaka flu, and it's not a real thing. At least, not yet. The Simpsons takes place in modern times, but shows like Futurama occur in the distant future, so seeing pieces of futuristic technology is to be expected. The show covers all of the classic sci-fi bases like flying cars, talking robots and humans, colonizing other planets. But even though the show takes place about 1,000 years into the future, it's been able to predict events that happened much sooner than that. In the episode The Lesser of Two Evils, the Planet Express crew visits a place called Pastorama, which is a historical theme park with quite a few inaccuracies. Okay, so maybe cowboys didn't hunt woolly mammoths, but we did end up getting a 9th Star Wars movie like this theater marquee predicted. It was called The Rise of Skywalker, and sadly not Yoda's bar mitzvah, but still, when this Futurama episode came out, we were only up to The Phantom Menace, which did not go over well with many fans. The idea of making the franchise extending to 9 episodes seemed crazy, but apparently it was just crazy enough to happen. And while we haven't seen Yoda's bar mitzvah yet, we did meet another member of his mysterious species in The Mandalorian. It's not exactly a secret that Disney is an absolute behemoth in the entertainment industry, and it's just getting bigger all the time. But there's one specific Disney move which was predicted by The Simpsons long before it actually played out in the real world. During the episode When You Dish Upon a Star, Homer had the opportunity to interact with celebrities such as Alec Baldwin and Kim Basinger. And at one point, the 20th Century Fox logo is in plain view, but with a very interesting addition. Underneath the logo are the words, "A division of Walt Disney Co." At the time, Fox operated independently from Disney, but that's no longer the case. This episode aired in 1998, and a couple of decades later, Disney actually did acquire Fox and its properties. Since The Simpsons is part of the Fox Broadcasting Company, Disney doesn't have authority over the show outright, but it does own the production company behind the show, and now fans can binge old episodes on Disney+. Who could have seen this change happening other than The Simpsons themselves? Not only did the show make a prediction that turned out to be true, but apparently it saw its own fate 2 decades into the future. Like The Simpsons, Futurama has also made an incredible amount of predictions about the entertainment industry over the years. We don't quite have talking celebrity heads in jars yet, but some aspects of the show's futuristic world have indeed come to fruition in the real world. Let's take a look at the episode Raging Bender, where the characters visit the set of All My Circuits, the movie. Not only do we get to see esteemed robot actor Calculon up close, but audience members will get to choose which course of action he takes during the film. This seemed like a futuristic concept at the time, but since the episode aired, it's become much more mainstream. There are tons of choose-your-own-adventure style video games now, including Telltale's popular titles The Walking Dead and The Wolf Among Us. We also had the interactive Black Mirror special Bandersnatch released on Netflix. This style of show was considered revolutionary by people who clearly forgot that Futurama did it first. Even though this style of storytelling made it into the real world, it remains to be seen whether it will become mainstream or remain a novelty. Interactive movies definitely sound awesome in theory, but they might take some time to catch on. Let's not forget that even major movie studios often struggle to get simple things right, like adapting one of the most popular and long-running Broadway musicals of all time. Yes, we're talking about the massive critical and financial failure that was the Cats movie. Despite the fact that it was an adaptation of a beloved play featuring a celebrity cast and a $100 million budget, most audience members couldn't stand it. And there's definitely a couple of cartoon characters we know would not have been fans. In 1997, the Quantity Time episode of Hey Arnold aired and seemed to predict this cinematic disaster. Arnold's not-so-secret admirer Helga and her father went to see a parody of the play Cats, appropriately titled Rats, and they weren't exactly fans. They laughed through the entire thing and declared it the stupidest thing they'd ever seen. When the Cats movie premiered, many Hey Arnold fans couldn't help but think that, hey, we've seen this somewhere before. Universal Pictures could have saved a lot of money if they'd have taken a hint from this Hey Arnold episode. Speaking of controversial creative decisions, let's talk about the final season of Game of Thrones. We know everyone is doing their best to forget it didn't happen, but let's take a look back for a moment. The show earned no shortage of fans because of its interesting characters, in-depth world building, and the many twists and turns the story followed over the years. And then we have Season 8, where things got really unpredictable. And not in a good way. Who could have seen the heroic Daenerys Targaryen, breaker of chains and mother of dragons, raising King's Landing to the ground atop Drogon? Well, apparently the writers of The Simpsons. The episode Surfsons puts the family in a fictional world similar to Westeros. It was clearly a Game of Thrones parody, and there's a scene in which the family watches helplessly as a dragon torches their village. Daenerys turning into the Mad Queen was definitely a surprise to most Game of Thrones viewers, but apparently The Simpsons saw it coming from a mile away. But perhaps the most impressive thing here is that this plot point worked just fine on The Simpsons, but did not go over so well with fans of Game of Thrones. Now let's take a look at some non-fictional twists predicted by fictional shows. In the Futurama episode The Lesser of Two Evils, we got to see a Miss Universe pageant. Even if you're not a fan of pageantry in real life, you have to admit that in this version, they actually feature contestants from elsewhere in the universe. Has anyone else noticed that our version has a lot of contestants who are just from boring old Earth? Anyway, in the episode, Zap Brannigan calls out Leela's name instead of the actual winner. Then, she's stripped of her flowers and crown, which are presented to the true winner, Miss Vega 4. This awkward scene is very similar to what we saw play out on stage years later when Steve Harvey hosted the event. He declared Miss Columbia to be the winner instead of the true victor, Miss Philippines. This was a horribly uncomfortable moment, but it felt familiar to fans of Futurama. Futurama features tons of futuristic inventions, but The Simpsons not so much. Well, usually. There have been occasions in which the show features pieces of technology that didn't exist at the time, but that we take for granted now. Autocorrect might not seem futuristic, but let's not forget that it always hasn't been around to turn our strongly worded texts into messages about ducks. Back in 1994, The Simpsons episode Lisa on Ice aired. During a school assembly, Dolph tries to make a memo of his Newton device, which would remind him to beat up Martin later on. But thanks to the device's autocorrect feature, it ended up saying "eat up Martha" instead. This was a joke which predicted an important piece of tech, but the episode had an even greater impact than most folks realized. Nitin Ganatra was Apple's engineer director who claims this episode was frequently referenced behind the scenes. Apparently, while working on the software used in the iPhone's keyboard, the team would frequently use the phrase "eat up Martha" to stress the importance of getting things just right. Even though autocorrect isn't always perfect, it seems like an impossible concept a couple of decades ago. Earlier, we mentioned that hover cars are a standard sci-fi staple when presenting stories that take place in the future. But sometimes, these scenes come way too early. In The Simpsons episode Future Drama, Bart and Lisa got to see what their lives would be like 8 years in the future when they graduate from high school. It turns out that their parents finally separated after Homer spent all of their savings on an underwater house. Come on, is that really any worse than watching him drink away all the family's excess funds? Homer's underwater home might not have gone according to plan, but at the very least, he does have a hover car, which is something many of us have dreamed of. But the problem here is that this episode is supposed to take place in the year 2013, and needless to say, we're a long ways away from zooming around in hover cars. Our vehicles may be able to drive themselves, but they still have to make contact with the road, at least for now. Of course, there are a number of things in this vision of 2013 which definitely weren't true, including the US dollar being replaced by the Reagan,
The deposit on this tux was 200 Reagans!
and scientists inventing magic. Futurama takes us past the year 2013 into 3000. Even though we're not quite there yet, there are some aspects of the show too fantastical to ever take place. There are tons of celebrities featured on the show, or at least some parts of them. In the future, presented in Futurama, celebrities' heads were revived using special cloning technology. Not only are these clones physical copies, but they also retain the memories and mannerisms of the original humans. Except that this isn't at all how cloning technology works. First of all, long gone folks like Abraham Lincoln wouldn't have enough DNA left to make any kind of clone at all. But even among newer stars, it wouldn't be possible to have their heads in jars like we see on Futurama. We can clone animals, but they don't have the same personalities or memories of the originals. They might share DNA, but there's a lot more to people than their genetic makeup, and that won't change no matter how far into the future you look ahead. Over the years, The Simpsons have made a ton of predictions about the future that have turned out to be true, but there are some fans who give the show too much credit when it comes to being clairvoyant. When a fire broke out at the Notre Dame Cathedral in Paris, a rumor started going around that this was one of the many events predicted by The Simpsons. An image even started making rounds on the internet which showed Mr. Burns standing in front of the Notre Dame of Springfield while it was engulfed in flames. Interestingly enough, this image is from an actual episode of the show, but it's been altered. The real scene is from the episode Husbands and Knives, where Marge starts up a woman's only gym and Homer is jealous of her success. We do see the Notre Dame Cathedral of Springfield, but it's not on fire, and Mr. Burns isn't standing in front of it. This scene was actually a parody of The Hunchback of Notre Dame, and not a prediction of things to come. In this episode, Homer underwent surgery to alter his appearance and then gets chased by an angry mob, which is similar to what poor Quasimodo went through. Futurama has introduced us to many different alien species, but there are plenty of native Earth-based creatures around as well. Somehow in the future, owls of all things have taken to plague the city of New York City. According to the show, by the time $29.99 rolled around, owls had totally replaced rats as the primary pests in the city. There are even owl exterminating services which deal with problems caused by these birds. Out of all the craziness of the show, this is honestly one of the most implausible aspects. Owls eat rodents, which means that if there are none in the city, owls wouldn't replace them, they would starve. It would have the exact opposite effect of owls taking over. In fact, some fans think this impossibility of owls infecting a city is exactly the point. This part of the show could be a parody of the book Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep by Philip K. Dick. In this story, owls can't cope with changes in their environment and become rare, if not outright extinct. It's possible that Futurama's owl problem was meant to illustrate what else Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep might have gotten wrong about the future. Let's take another look at the trip the Simpsons took into the future in the episode Lisa's Wedding. Well, the future here is in 2010, but hey, the episode came out all the way back in 1995. Lisa visits a fortune teller at the Renaissance Fair, who predicts that she'll get engaged to a man named Hugh Parkfield. When Lisa travels to England in order to meet her future in-laws, we see that the iconic Big Ben has made the switch to digital. Clearly, since we're well past 2010 at this point, the Simpsons got this one wrong. Not only that, but we highly doubt Big Ben would ever lose its iconic clock face in favor of a digital one, since it's a cultural icon. In fact, as recently as 2017, a restoration plan was put in place to preserve the clock. The chimes were silenced to allow for repairs, and the clock face was restored to its former state. The only modernization Big Ben is getting is a new elevator, not an entirely new method of telling time.
Hey!
Which one of these futuristic predictions was your favorite? Are there any that we missed? Share your pick with us in the comments section below, and don't forget to click on the subscribe button and turn on your notifications for more of the latest and greatest content from us here at Screen Rant. Thanks for watching. We'll see you again next time.